I'm going to give you a brief background of the project and hopefully interest many others who would like to apply for this similar grant to go ahead and apply. Our project title is really strengthening the research administration capacity at the Infectious Diseases Research Collaboration to improve oversight of grant awards. So that's really a mouthful, so we just call it the G11 Research Administration Project, in line with the name of the funding opportunity to which we responded. By way of background, since 1997, NIH dramatically increased funding for research and training in developing countries, Uganda inclusive. So as you may be aware, Uganda is one of the largest recipients of NIH funding in Africa, second only to the Republic of South Africa, although of course there's a huge gap between the monies received by the two countries, and you can see the actual data using tools like NIH Reporter. So because of the huge amount of funding that was being sent to us, the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases set out to train people, and they've been doing 2 regional workshops, and I'm sure some of you have attended these. But the workshops were meant really to help us to improve our skills in NIH funds management, understanding the NIH grant policy statement, understanding the various NIH platforms, and reporting for NIH grants. However, there were still gaps. The training was too short. It's about 2 to 3 days. So you're pumped with a lot of material with very little time to actually digest it and ask relevant questions. Also, there was limited attendance due to the cost of travel, which is not affordable by most institutions. Many of you will agree with me that most of the grants that come to our institutions have specific objectives, and many PIs are not ready to release money for research administrators to go out there and train. So as a result of those gaps that were still there, NIAID released a funding opportunity, that's PAR 18335, which we applied for. This has since expired, but there's a current ongoing call, and it's PAR-21037. This is still ongoing, and it has an expiry date of July 29, 2023. So please apply if you want to benefit from this opportunity. So this funding opportunity announcement has a purpose of really training senior administrators and empowering them to serve as institutional grants management leaders. Grants management leaders means people who can be consulted on the different policies that govern the funding, someone who can interpret the rules and regulations that are contained in a notice of award to everyone in the institution. So this funding gives you an opportunity to get that training and be able to understand NIH policies better. It also provides you with an opportunity to access good business practices for managing grant awards. So one of the eligibility criteria was for you to have a US host institution which receives at least $5 million per year in NIH grants. The assumption is that if it receives $5 million US dollars per year, then they must have the required systems in place, the standard operating procedures, policies to manage grants, and therefore they're a good candidate to build capacity. So in our case, our US host institution is the University of California, and they've really been a good resource for us. One piece of advice would be that if you're thinking of applying, you need to start looking out for a host institution early enough, because they have to go through their bureaucracy to try and accept, because they have to write you a letter that comes from them committing to be your training partners. So the funding also allows you to develop and implement SOPs for tracking grant expenditure, comply with NIH funding policies, and assist or train other administrators in the local area. So our local area is certainly Uganda, and through these lunchtime seminars, we hope we shall be able to share what we have learned with you and others who will be interested. So when we got this grant award, it allows us to support hands-on training at the US host institution for up to 1 month. So as you all know, COVID-19 took over our lives, and certainly many of the things that we had planned to do could not take place as we had planned for them. So for our training at our US host institution, it actually became a virtual training. And for us, the silver lining was that all the research administrators at IDRC were able to attend these sessions. And for me, that was a big plus, because training two people and expecting them to come and train everyone would not be, as beneficial as it has been with everyone being able to attend by themselves. So the second one was the NIH regional workshop, but these were also canceled because people couldn't travel to South Africa where the training was supposed to be. It's still on hold, and probably when everyone is vaccinated, we hope to have it at some point. So the third one was the training at the NIH office in Rockville. This also became a virtual event, and yeah, we were able to meet other grant recipients and interact with them, and also the grants management officers. And it was a great learning experience. We got a number of resources, which we hope to share with you as we go along. So the final thing that this grant supports is a sustainability initiative, something that can go on even beyond the funding period. So finally, for the purpose of this forum, our third aim was to establish a grants administration support center. And under this, we hoped to provide placements for junior research administrators from other NIH grant recipient organizations. In IDRC, we hoped that we would host someone for 1 month, and we were targeting 6 trainees over a 12-month period. However, this one is on hold right now because IDRC is working remotely, so we cannot host anyone. Maybe in the near future, when our offices open, we shall be able to do it. So the second one is these lunchtime seminars. And I'm really excited that they've started today. And I want to thank all of you who responded and filled in our training needs assessment. We received quite a number of training needs. Some of them are within the scope of the grant, others are not. But we are committed to trying to work out how we can reach everyone. We have created a database of research administrators, and we have reached the 100 mark. I want to thank all of you who have shared with your friends and have enabled them to join. So because of the answers you gave us in the training needs assessment, many of you said WhatsApp is the social media platform that you're very conversant with. So we have gone ahead and created a WhatsApp group. And we hope that this WhatsApp group will be a resource through which we share with each other. Let us share funding opportunities. Let us share questions. Every question is a good question. Let's support each other by answering the questions. We will share also our recorded sessions through that WhatsApp group. We will share other resources, including updates on agency rules and regulations. And we hope to share even other funding opportunities which are beyond NIH. So please feel free to share information with others within the set ground rules. We really encourage interaction and hope that it will be a real resource to everyone on there. So in terms of sustainability, we hope to carry this forward, and we want to create an annual 3-day event for knowledge sharing amongst research administrators. Many of you are around and saw things like ARA, which are no longer happening. So we hope that through this forum, we shall come together and create something like that. And because of the costs involved in putting up such events, these will certainly be paid events, but hopefully we can count on all of you when that time comes, so that we come together every year and share different topics in research administration. So without taking too much time, I want to thank you all for listening, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. So over to you, Claire.
Okay, thank you very much, Susan. It has really been an enlightening highlight of the G11 Research Administration project background and aims, as well as activities. It has been very informative, and we have gained valuable insight into the G11 project objectives and aims. I don't know whether any of us has a question to that, or maybe in case you have any question as we go along, you can just type in the chat. Okay, so our second speaker today is Jackie Nora Nanteza, and she is the grants officer at Makerere University School of Public Health with 6 years experience in pre-grant award management. Jackie is greatly familiar with the different donor requirements for grant application and particularly enjoys coordinating and working with research teams in searching, sharing, and applying for funding opportunities. So I now take the opportunity to invite Jackie Nora Nanteza to deliver a session under the topic Identifying Funding Opportunities. You're welcome, Jackie. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Claire. Hello, everyone. I am very happy to be invited to do this presentation. Claire and Susan, thank you very much for organizing this. We are very excited to have a platform where we can share, where we can learn from each other, and where we can continue networking. So the first presentation in this G11 award is Finding Funding, and I think it's very good that it's the first one because the grants that we are managing certainly start somewhere, and most of them start at us looking for the funding opportunities, sharing them, applying for them, and then we are finally able to implement the projects. So just in case anyone has just fallen into the presentation and they do not know what it's about, my presentation is about finding funding opportunities, which I've called Finding Funding. As Claire has introduced me, I'm a grants officer at the School of Public Health, and one of the things I do in my day-to-day roles is finding funding opportunities and sharing them and interpreting them and discussing them with researchers, as well as applying for them together with the teams. So my presentation is divided into 5 major parts. We want to understand the funding mechanisms that are available for us to apply for. We want to know the funding opportunities, the types of the funding opportunities, where we look for the funding opportunities, and when we get to them, what should we look out for? And then finally, what are the best practices when sharing these funding opportunities? So I was informed that the group that is attending this session is a mixed group. Some of us are advanced in grants management, others are mid-level, while there are some of us that are starting out. So I will not take some of these definitions for granted. Some of these terms that we use, someone refers to a G11 like it's an everyday term, but there are people who are hearing it for the first time. So I will quickly go through some of these terms that we'll keep hearing throughout the trainings that we are going to have. And one of them is a grant. What is a grant? So a grant is non-repayable. It's financial assistance that is offered to a recipient. The recipient may be an individual, but many times it's an institution. And this money is not to be paid back. It's not a loan. Once it is given to the institution, it is to implement a certain project, to get certain outcomes, and once the grant has achieved its objectives, then that is it. It is not paid back. So we have another common term, which is a contract. So the difference between a contract and a grant is that for a contract, you have one party performing activities or carrying out certain services on behalf of another. So you'll find that in a contract, the work that is being done is prescriptive. It's prescribed because you're doing this work on behalf of another. For example, at the School of Public Health, where I'm from, we mainly implement research grants and we have data collection. So maybe there is need to collect data from a hospital. And maybe, for example, right now we have COVID and we have minimal movement. So maybe we do not want to send researchers from the School of Public Health to a certain district out of Kampala, but we are able to contract an organization or a hospital or a certain institution that is already geographically located in the area where we want to collect data. And that institution will collect data on behalf of the School of Public Health, on behalf of IDRC, on behalf of any other institution. So you find that it's a legal arrangement between two parties where one party performs services or certain activities on behalf of another. So another type of funding mechanism is cooperative agreements. So what happens here is, just like a grant, the money is given to an institution to implement a certain project. But what happens for a cooperative agreement, the funder has substantial involvement in the implementation of this project. So you find that you have to report more, you have to ask for certain permissions, you have to do more regular updates. It's consultative. It's not like where an institution is given money to meet a certain objective and it is able to implement that project in the means it finds best. For cooperative agreement, there is need for continuous consultation with a funder because they desire to be substantively involved in the implementation of that project. For certain reasons, maybe it's a complicated project, maybe there is need to continue learning from each other, maybe it's the first time a certain methodology is being used, and that is when we have cooperative agreements. And then we have other types of funding mechanisms like scholarships. I'm sure all of us are aware of this, where funding is given for student support, for education. We have prizes. Many times we grants officers focus on finding funding opportunities for grants, for cooperative agreements, for contracts, but there are also prizes. They are sometimes not as big as grants, but they are good. They are good for people who have had outstanding achievement. For example, currently there's a lot of research being done around management of COVID. So if someone comes up with something that is novel in the management of COVID, maybe it's in the treatment, maybe it's in the prevention, maybe it's in the vaccination, something novel, then they deserve a prize because it's outstanding achievement. And I advise grants officers not to shun prizes and sharing opportunities for prizes because they're also good. So what is a funding opportunity? What we've just looked at are the mechanisms for funding, but what is a funding opportunity? So a funding opportunity is where a donor publishes their intention to award a grant or a contract or any kind of funding. And it's usually competitive. It's a competitive process. So because it is put out in the public, it's usually competitive, and the winner, sometimes it is said whether there will be several people getting the grant or if it is just for one winner. And that is what a funding opportunity is. There are different terms to it. Sometimes they are called requests for application, sometimes they are called notices of funding availability, sometimes they are called solicitation. But all in all, it's an invitation to apply for available funding to implement a certain project. And these are the types of funding opportunities. Those of you who are working with NIH must be familiar with these terms, but different donors use different terms. But generally, these are the common types of funding opportunities. We have parent announcements, and these are bigger announcements these are broad. They are usually active for a very long time. By active for long period, I mean they do not have a single deadline. They may have multiple deadlines, or they are open for longer periods. For example, we are in 2021, you may have an announcement that is open till 2023. So for parent announcements, they call for investigator-initiated work. And I'm going to say that in comparison to program announcements. While parent announcements are open for longer periods and they target investigator-initiated awards, program announcements are also usually for multi-year projects, but for them, they define the areas of interest. We shall be sharing examples as we go along. And then we have a smaller group, which are requests for applications. So these ones are really prescribed. You have a prescribed scope, the budget is specified, the period is specified, and there is a single due date. And those are the common ones. Those are the commonest, the request for applications and the request for proposals. Let me pause right here and know if there are any questions this far. Let me know if people are listening. You know, we are used to presenting while looking at people's faces so that you know whether they are happy, whether they are understanding. So let me just get some feedback.
Yes, we are there.
All right.
Yes, I'm there.
Oh, great. Nice to hear from you. I'm seeing on the chat, people wondering whether the slides, they will. So please just listen in. The slides will be shared. All right, since I've heard from you, I'm ready to move on. So where do we find funding opportunities? We can get funding opportunities from local sources. One of them is in newspapers. I usually look at the Monday papers, the section where they share jobs. At the end of it, they usually also share bid notices, invitations to tender, and in there you can find an opportunities that is relevant to your institution. Since most of us are coming from health institutions, the other places are ministries. There are funding opportunities from these ministries: Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Agriculture, and all the others. And the reason there are funding opportunities in these ministries is because the ministries desire to work with local collaborators, they desire to work with research institutions, they trust our RIGA in doing research. So we can go to the ministries and we are able to work alongside them to implement different projects. For example, if the Ministry of Health is doing the insecticide, the mosquito net distribution campaign, there'll be need for research institution to find out, did people really take these nets? When they took the nets, did they use them correctly? Did they know how to use the nets? Did they receive the nets? Or did they think that the ministry has put a certain drug in the nets and they shouldn't use them? Are they using the nets correctly? So whenever a government institution is implementing a certain project, it usually needs the services of a research institution to find out whether that project that has been implemented is able to achieve the goals that were set out for it to achieve. And it's the same for NGOs. We have NGOs implementing different projects. We have NGOs that let me say, educate children. We have NGOs that carry out advocacy. We have NGOs that do all kinds of work. And these NGOs rely on the services of research institutions to maybe do impact evaluations. They rely on services of research institutions to carry out feasibility studies, find out whether their proposed activity will actually kick off and whether it will be able to be implemented in the area where they want to carry it out. They need research institutions to do mapping exercises. So local NGOs are also a very good place for us to find a funding opportunity. The other one are local offices of bilateral agencies like WHO, WFP, UNICEF, and others. So down here, you can see for example, I got this screenshot from one of the ministries, and you see there is this section for opportunities. That's where we go to find out if there are any opportunities at that particular ministry, at that particular NGO, and at that particular bilateral agency. You just go to the website and you check out the opportunities tab, and you're able to see whether there are any opportunities for your institution or for your organization to apply. So one thing about finding funding opportunities that I'll say is that you cannot find funding opportunities in a single place. You have to look in different places. Sometimes you'll check the newspaper and there isn't an opportunity that day. You'll go to the ministry website and maybe there is just one opportunity, and maybe it doesn't tie in very well with the mandate of your institution. Then you go to local NGOs. So when you set out to find funding opportunities, you should be ready to check multiple sources. And you should also have time so that you're able to go to all these different websites, and also to acquire maybe hard copy newspapers or to check the websites of the newspapers. So it requires time. As you can see, it requires internet access, and it requires your commitment as well. And you may not be able to do it in one sitting, because we have a lot to do as research administrators. So sometimes you may not get one block time to sit down and go to all these different sites. You should be able to check different places, and you need to commit time for that. So besides the local sources, there are funding opportunity platforms. These are platforms that have dedicated themselves to finding funding opportunities and putting them in one area where you can go and look for all of them. Examples are Funds for NGOs, Research Beeline, Research Professional, Africa, Grants Forward. This list is not exhaustive. There are very many platforms. Some of them are free, others you have to pay a subscription, others offer a trial. So you're able to use it maybe for a month for free. And if you see that it meets your goals, then you can be able to subscribe. So we can also share more on other funding opportunity platforms. I've just highlighted a few, but there are very many. So the advantage of these platforms is that you have all these funding opportunities in one set, but as a research administrator that is looking for funding, later we are going to look at the things that you need to look at in a funding opportunity. When you go to this platform, you do not carry all the opportunities as they are presented there. You need to be able to open each of the opportunities and find out its relevance to your work that you would like to do as an institution or as a group of individuals at your institution. And you also need institutional support, because some of these platforms need to be paid for. But if you have shown cause, if you have shown the relevance of sharing these funding opportunities, you're able to secure the support of your institutional leadership to pay for these platforms. And the subscription is not very expensive. It's really worth it. So the other place where we can check, or the other places where we can check for funding opportunities, are the donor websites. So in your work as a research administrator, you will interface various donors. Some of them are, for example, the Gates Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, Medical Research Council, Wellcome Trust, NIH, Grand Challenges Canada, IDRC, PEER. You'll interface all these donors. And if they have given funding to your institution or another institution before, especially an institution in your area, maybe health, maybe education, whatever. If they've given funding before, then they are likely to give funding again. So sometimes they have opportunities pages, just like we saw here. Sometimes they have opportunities pages. Many times they do actually have opportunities pages where you can click and you're able to check and find out the funding opportunities that are available at that time. So how do we know which organizations to check? Like I have said, these are organizations that have formally funded your own institution or have funded other institutions that carry out work like your own institution. There are also other funding opportunities sites like the USG funding sites. I assume many of you are familiar with grants.gov. where we have funding from the US government. It's also like we talked about the platforms. Grants.gov is a platform that has funding from the US government. And when you check in there, you're able to see grants from USAID, grants from NIH, and other US government sources. We shall be able to check on, to go through some of these during a practical session. So I continue. So we've said that we can get funding from local sources, which are in country. We can get funding opportunities from platforms that are set aside to share funding opportunities. We can get them from USG sites, and we can also go to the donor websites themselves. And then there are non-conventional sources. For example, professional networks. Sometimes you'll just be having a chat with one of your colleagues and they'll let you know, oh, by the way, there is a funding opportunity on this and this. Have you seen it? There is a funding opportunity on this and this. Is anyone at your institution applying for it? The government of Uganda is providing funding for such and such an activity. There is a lot of funding for technology. There is a lot of funding for innovations. People share. So it's good that you keep your ears open. And of course, professional networks, when we go for conferences, when we go for meetings, when we have meetings like these ones, even on Zoom calls, for example, at the end of this, someone may have an opportunity and they'll let us know that there is currently funding for this and this. So professional networks are very important sources of funding opportunities. The other one is social media. Twitter, many of these donor agencies have Twitter accounts where they tweet, for example, Grand Challenges Canada, they'll just say that funding available for maybe maternal newborn health, funding available for COVID vaccine, funding available for health education, funding available for this and this. So if you have subscribed, or if you're able to check out the social media for many of these donor agencies, you'll be able to get these alerts that have funding opportunities. And not only for the donor agencies, even for our institution, even our own institutions, even from our colleagues, people share opportunities on Facebook. We are now going to start sharing these opportunities on WhatsApp. So it's a really good way to find funding opportunities. It's not a very serious thing that you must only check very formal sources. But of course, whenever you receive a funding opportunity, be it from a platform, be it from social media, follow the link, check and find out the credibility of that funding opportunity before you put in so much effort writing a proposal, only to find out that it was a sham, that it wasn't true. So go the extra mile to verify the funding opportunity before you apply. So there are universities that share funding opportunities on their websites. For example, University of Stanford, University of Ghana. If you go to those websites, you're able to get funding opportunities that you can share with researchers in your own institution so that you apply for them, or so that you partner with the universities or any other institution that has shared that funding opportunity on its website. Let me pause right there and know if anyone has a question on the sources or where to look for funding opportunities, or if anyone wants to share anywhere else that we can look for funding opportunities besides the ones that I've shared. Again, we are learning from each other.
Esther's hand is up. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Jackie. I wanted to ask, what are some of those things you can do to verify the authenticity of an FOA? You said go an extra mile to verify if it's real, not a scam, but what are some of those things you can do as part of the verification?
Do we have any other question, or should I go ahead to answer Esther's question? Okay, how do we verify the authenticity of a funding opportunity? So many times these opportunities, for example, an opportunity has been forwarded to you via WhatsApp. Sometimes there is a link, sometimes there isn't a link. If there is a link, follow that link. Sometimes when it's a sham, the link does not work. So you need to follow the link and see, does it connect to the donor website? There is no single donor agency that does not have a website of its own. So when you open the link, you will see that it is actually a link that comes from a certain donor website. And then you will know that it's true. But if it's a link that gives you errors, that gives you text and does not refer to anything, then it is probably a sham. Even those that appear in newspapers, there's usually a link to follow. And the funding opportunities usually have contact information. So if you feel, if there is no link to follow, then maybe there is a contact that you can call to verify whether this opportunity is true. You can also cross-check with other people that have been, for example, you can cross-check with your grants office. You let them know that such and such a funding opportunity has been shared. Kindly check to see if it's actually an authentic funding opportunity. Have I answered your question, Esther?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Any other question or any addition this far? All right, I'll continue. So after we've gone to all these different sources and you feel like, yes, I have identified this opportunity. For example, I'm interested in children's health and I've seen an opportunity that is talking exactly about what I am passionate about. It's about children's health and it's about nutrition, and I'm interested in this and I have the data to apply for this opportunity. I like the agency that is offering the opportunity. For some reason, maybe you have experience with it. Maybe their regulations or their requirements are easy for you to be able to attain. For some reason, you're really interested in this opportunity. You do not just stop at that. There are things you need to look for in a funding opportunity. And one important thing is the submission due date. Personally, whenever someone shares with me the funding opportunity, before I read the details, right after the title, the next thing I look for is the submission due date. And why? You do not want to put effort into an opportunity that is already passed. You do not want to put effort into an opportunity that is expiring tomorrow because you may not be able to put up a proposal in a day or two. So one important thing to look at is the submission due date, and that is for you to tell whether you're able to apply for that funding opportunity. The due date may be in a few days' time, it may be in a week, but from your analysis, you may be able to put up a proposal within a week. Maybe they just want a concept note. Maybe they just want an expression of interest. So depending on what is required for submission, if you know the due date, you're able to make a decision on whether to submit or not. And the other thing is, while some grants have a single due date, some have multiple due dates. So you're able to tell if the due date for a particular...
You know which account we are putting it? No, we transferred some US dollars.
There's been an interruption, sorry about that. I was saying that some grant opportunities have more than one due date. So if you check out, you're able to decide whether you'll apply right now or you'll apply in the future for that due date. The other thing to look at is the eligibility criteria. Eligibility criteria simply refers to whether you, your team, or your institution are in position to apply for this opportunity. For example, eligibility criteria could be geographical. Are they inviting foreign institutions to apply for this funding? Are they inviting institutions of higher learning? Are they inviting nonprofits? Are they inviting women-led organizations? Whatever it is, when you look at the eligibility criteria, you're able to judge whether you should go ahead and apply for this funding opportunity or not. Because no matter how perfect your proposal is, if you are not eligible for a certain grant or any kind of a certain type of funding, you will not be awarded if you do not fall within the eligibility criteria. We look at the project objectives. Are they in line with what you want to propose? So their funding, the opportunity will clearly spell out the objectives. You need to look at those and see if they cohere with what you propose. We look at the project scope, geographical, technical, and so on and so forth. you may be able to implement the project, but maybe they want you to implement it within the East Africa region. So you want to check whether your institution is able to implement a certain project beyond Uganda. Sometimes they want you to implement it in a totally different country. So those are the things you need to look for. And then you look at the funding budget, the amount of money that is being offered to carry out this project. Are you able to carry out what you propose within that budget? Is it financially feasible? That is what we test for when we look at the funding budget. Are you able, for example, if you're going to employ people on your project, are you able to pay them? Or is the grant too small that you will not be able to put up the kind of team that you would want to use? Or it also guides you on who to work with. If the budget is very small, then maybe you need to work with interns. Maybe you need to work with students. You need to work with people who are not looking at who may be able to fit within a smaller budget. Another important thing to look at are partnerships and collaborations. Do you need to set up a partnership to be able to apply for this funding? Or are you able to go into it alone or as a single institution? And then there are requisite requirements. For example, sometimes you'll apply for a grant that requires you to implement certain activities in a laboratory. Does your institution have a laboratory? Maybe it requires you to implement certain activities. If you need to do a clinical trial, you need to be able to access the patients. You need to be able to access the hospital for you to be able to do this kind of work. So what are the requisite requirements for you to carry out that project?
There is a question for you in the chat. The question is, what is the probability that the identified funding shall be awarded?
Grants are competitive. So because it's a competition, there are chances that you will get it. There is always a winner and a loser. And I'm sure the reason we are having this kind of training is to push us towards being on the winning team. So the probability, I would say, is 50%. It's a 50% chance you may get the funding or you may not get it. But I'm sure by the time we go through all these trainings, by the end of this G11, we shall be leaning more towards the yes than the no. Thank you very much. So I would like us to do a small practical on how to identify funding opportunities. This session is not very long, so maybe I don't know if all of us are able to do this, but the good thing, this presentation is also going to be shared, and also you know that different donor sites to go to. So I'd just like to show you, we have a few minutes to go, so I'll just go to one of these sites to show you, for example, if you go to a site, what do you do when you're trying to get a funding opportunity? So I have gone to the UKRI site, and this is what I do when I want to find an opportunity there.
Jackie, please share the site. We are still looking at the slides.
Are you able to see my screen now?
Yes, we are.
So I have gone to the UKRI site. And like I've said, when you go to that site, you go to the opportunities, and I've found 115 opportunities. So I am now going to open, ideally you should open each of them, or you should open those that seem closer to what you want to propose or that are within your institutional mandate. And then in there, you look for the key things that we said we look for in an opportunity. So first of all, I've chosen the option of going to a funder's website, which is just one of the ways of finding funding. National Mouse and Genetics, no, I don't think so. Population Systems and Medicine Program, let me look at that. So we click that and see what is involved in there. So the opportunity status, it's upcoming, meaning it's going to be open at some point. It's not yet open. We can see there is an opening date of 15th and there is a closing date of 15th May. I mean of 19th May. So we are well within time. And then we'll look for other things. We said we look at eligibility or who can apply. Let's see, are we able to apply for this funding opportunity? It's for any UK-based researcher with an employment contract at an eligible research institution can apply for this grant. So right away, I know that my institution is not eligible for this. So I'll close that site and I'll go back to find another funding opportunity. And like I said, when you're looking for funding opportunities, you need to have time. You need to be ready to search. So I'll continue. Discovery Fellowship. Okay. population systems, pre-announcement, experimental medicine. Ideally, you should be opening all these, but I'm just sampling, just so I find something that I may be interested in as an individual. Mental health, MRC neuroscience. Okay, let me try this. Let me see. So I'll look at the deadline, 26th May. That's okay. Who can apply? Are we able to apply for this? Any UK-based researcher with employment at an eligible institution. So this does not work for me as well. I'll continue searching. This is a partnership. Maybe my institution can partner with another. So I'll look at this. Deadline, we are well within the deadline. Who can apply? Any UK-based researcher still. So when this is happening, you don't get discouraged. You continue searching. That is why we called it identifying funding opportunities or searching for funding opportunities. You need to have committed to do this. So you continue searching and the search goes on. And as you continue searching, you'll find an opportunity. Well, I wished that we could get an opportunity that we are eligible for, but I'm also conscious of time. Let me try this. Developmental pathway, 24th March. That will be closing soon, but let's see. Oh, thank God. So you see this one, you should be based at an eligible research institution. And what are those eligible research institutions? Higher education institutions, UKRI approved independent research organization, government funded organizations, MRC institutes, and others. So I'm from the School of Public Health in Makerere, and we are an institution of higher learning. So I can straight away see that we are eligible to apply for this funding. Colleagues in the College of Health Sciences are eligible to apply for this funding. So that is one of the things. So we've looked at the time, we've looked at the eligibility, and then we shall go ahead. You go ahead to look at each of those that I shared in my presentation. You go ahead to look at all those other things that we shared in the presentation to find out whether you should apply for that funding. And I encourage you, when you go back, try out these different things that we have talked about so that you see if you can identify a funding opportunity. So I'll pause right here and let Claire take over before we can wrap up. Over to you, Claire.
Okay, thank you very much, Jackie. Well, this is a systematic and enjoyable session. I acknowledge it is very good. Well, thank you very much, Jackie. I agree this is a systematic and enjoyable session. So we are now going to take 5 minutes and we are heading to the training evaluation exercise. And I request you to open the link in the chat so that you respond to a few questions and submit. I hope you can all be able to see the link in the chat. Please click on that link and then respond to those questions. We have 5 minutes. We need to get your feedback because we need to deliver sessions that are tailored to your needs and expectations. So kindly fill in those questions and submit. Now have 4 minutes to go. We've so far received 3 submissions. We have 3 more minutes. We have 5 submissions. You're left with 2 minutes. So far we have 9 submissions. Okay, let me give you 1 more minute. We so far have 21 responses, 23 responses. We have 30 responses so far. We have about 30 seconds left. So I'm going to close the session of training evaluation, but I urge you to please complete and submit as we continue. So we are going back to our session with Jackie. Over to you, Jackie.
Thank you, Claire. So ladies and gentlemen, I'll be concluding my presentation with sharing funding opportunities. When we identify these opportunities, it's not for us to keep them and celebrate that we have so far found 5 funding opportunities or 50 funding opportunities. We need to share them with our networks, with our institutions, with researchers, with our colleagues, so that they can be applied for. The goal for this whole activity is for us to be able to win an award, for us to be able to win a grant. So when you identify the opportunity, you need to share it widely on your website, using email, using your email list or social media. sometimes we know people that are particularly interested in certain opportunities. You need to share. You can also share to them individually. For example, if you know someone is doing work on COVID vaccine and there is an opportunity you've identified in that area, you need to share with them. You need to give them a call. You need to let them know that there is this opportunity that is expiring in a month's time. Are you ready to apply for it? Do you want me to give you more information? And when you're sharing funding opportunities, sometimes these are very long documents, 23 pages, 50 pages. Make it simple. Highlight the important things like the due date, the objectives. Highlight things they need to look out for. Follow them up, find out, did you see the opportunity? Did you like it? Is it relevant? Do you need any kind of support? Direct them to the grants office, direct them to the person who prepares the budget, direct them to the person who can be able to get institutional clearance. So once you identify the opportunities, package them nicely and share them widely so that we are able to eventually have teams apply for the funding and we are finally able to get these grants coming to our institutions for us to be able to execute our mandates. Do we have any question on that? I am able to answer questions on WhatsApp. I'm also sharing my email address and phone number here so that we continue interacting even after this session. Once again, Susan, Claire, and the entire team, I'm very grateful for this opportunity to do this presentation, and I hope that we continue engaging and interacting. Thank you very much, everyone.
So, do we have questions that we can take on now?
Thank you, Claire. I have a question or a comment.
Yes, please.
My name is Arnold. Thank you very much, Jackie, for your presentation. It's very insightful. I just wanted to say it would be great to summarize these funding opportunities into some sort of table and then eventually create a database of them that you can refer to later on. Because for instance, you'll find an interesting funding opportunity from MRC. Maybe you'll find 5 of them. So it would be great to summarize them in a table and then probably share them after that. Thank you.
Yes, I totally agree with you. Thank you very much for that comment. Claire, would you like to moderate any questions or comments?
Okay. Do we have any more questions, additions, comments from anyone? Or maybe you can get questions, or maybe you want something you want to seek clarification on. You can just share in the WhatsApp group. Members would be very happy to help. In case you get it at a later time after our session. So with that, I really want to take this opportunity to thank Jackie very much for delivering an enjoyable and an informative session. Personally, I've loved it. It has been good, and I really look forward to having more sessions of this kind. It has been very enlightening, and I also extend my sincere thanks to each and every one of you for supporting this important capacity building activity. All participants for actively participating in this session. We look forward to sharing more sessions with you. Well, with that, I guess I am closing the session of today. Unless anyone has any addition. I guess I'm closing today's session. Well, see you everyone. I wish you a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you, Claire.
Bye.
Thank you, Claire. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, and bye.